All right, welcome back. Just finished making a What Happened in Robbins Air Force Base video, so definitely recommend checking that out. Um, Getting back to this comment that one of my subscribers made. Um, Talking about getting to know your area. Walk and bicycle around your area frequently. Just did that last night. Just put a video up about it. Not even in response to this, ironically. I wouldn't be ashamed of claiming that I did it in response if I did, but completely randomly. You know, one of the videos, one of my subscribers was talking about mentioned frequency. You know, and I'm probably the least ethereal person you will ever meet, but I do kind of believe in little bits of pieces of sort of um, non-mainstream science, if you will. So I think this subscriber and I were just on the same frequency maybe when he was commenting that. You know, he commented 10 hours ago, which I guess was, in the middle of the night. So I was just getting back. I had gotten back. So, being familiar with your area, water sources, food warehouses, my neighbors, local fruit trees. Water sources, I got a couple sources of water coming in. There's the big LA aqueduct, of course, which is somewhere in the vicinity. It comes, I'll have to look it up. There's a pool near my house, which I'd have to filter the water, but better than nothing if I am bugging in. Food warehouses, that's a really interesting, you could almost make a whole video about that. How far are you willing to go when shit hits the fan? Are you willing to break into Costco? Uh, what if there are other people in Costco who want, we're talking long term shit to the fan. We're not talking about like even something like Puerto Rico. And even in Puerto Rico, I know that, or not Puerto Rico, but, people loot even when it's short term. So I'm not talking about looting here. I'm talking about like society is ended and Costco's not coming back. So the stuff's just going to rot or somebody's going to go grab it, just to be clear. Um, that's a good question. How far are you willing to go after it becomes fairly clear that society's not coming back, in regards to increasing your food supplies or your other supplies? Most of my neighbors are retired. I have a few multifamilies around me, but most of it's single family, and most of them are sort of 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, somewhere in there. Um, you know, I guess I would feel a little bit weird, to be honest. I don't have a problem talking to my neighbors, and I do walk around the block quite a bit and ride my bike around, but to go up and knock on their doors and say, "Hey, I'm into prepping and I'd like you to be part of my shit hits the fan coalition should the power ever go out forever." Um, I mean, I am for working with like-minded people, and I do think getting to know my neighbors is important, but I suppose at the moment I'm just not uh, I don't know. I want to say nervous, but I'm just not convinced that it's necessarily the best um, the best way to go about it. I don't know what the best way to go about it is. I definitely like, being active in your community and that kind of thing. Um, and, tell me what you think about that. If you have gone door to door and talked to your neighbors and say, hey, how does that conversation go for you? I'd really love to know. I'd just love to know how you broach it. Do you talk about prepping? Do you talk about emergencies? Do you talk or do you not talk about it at all and just say, "Hey, this is my name. I live over here. Let me know if you ever need anything," and you just leave it at that? Really curious to what your thoughts are on that. Food trees in my area. There are a few. Got a lot of people with some palmettos, big funky grapefruit teardrop looking things. In fact, one of my neighbors, their guayabas are coming into season, and if I was a better prepper, I would be asking them if I could harvest their fruit and harvesting their fruit and canning their fruit for free. I'm sure it's got tons of vitamins in it. It's got a real strong flavor. Definitely keep things interesting when shit hits the fan. I need to buy a bigger pot if I'm going to do some canning. I don't have any pot for doing canning. I also don't like the fruit that much, to be honest. It is a little bit weird. Um, Not that weird, but so I'm not currently bugging my neighbors to get their fruit. I have pinched, like an apple or whatever. If their tree, if I can reach the fruit without trespassing on their property, I might grab a fruit off the tree. Especially most of my neighbors that have fruit trees, honestly, really don't pick them or take care of them. And maybe I will try to walk around my block a little more often and just talk. And if I really see a tree that's doing pretty good, and I see some neighbors, or maybe if I don't see them, maybe one of these days I will knock on their doors and just say, "Hey, can I pick your tree like once in a while? No big deal." Maybe I'd love to be able to do something back for them. Like if I pick their apple tree, like maybe if I get 20 apples, like make them a little apple pie or something. I don't know, but or if I'm getting lemons, give them some lemon curd. So yeah, I don't really know a bunch of my. I know the neighbors in my apartment complex somewhat, but I really don't know neighbors in my neighborhood. And to be honest, and I kind of hate to say this, but Californians are not as neighborly as you would think. Some of them are, and certainly I think uh, the single family owners tend to be a little bit better about this. But I'm out pretty often on my bike and such, and you see people walking their dogs and stuff like that, but I'm not personally noticing a lot of neighbors like hanging out in their front yard, having conversations with other neighbors in their front yard, doing things together, block parties, community projects. I'm sure it's happening, and I'm not trying to be pessimistic about it, but um, for whatever reason, that neighborly way of life. I don't know if it's the city. I don't know if it's California. I don't know if it's technology. Probably a lot of things going on, but I find that neighbors just aren't really as interested in being neighborly. Um, it's kind of sad. It's very sad, I think. But and I can be. I don't need to worry about people that don't want to be neighborly. I'm sure there'll always be people like that, but I guess that's kind of some of the reasons I'm just a little bit reticent to kind of go knocking on my neighbor's door and talk to them about this stuff. But so let me get into the meat and potatoes of what the person commenting, they were saying basically that no matter what, you're probably not going to want to be in Los Angeles when the shit hits the fan. And look, I don't disagree. I really don't. Um, I guess I kind of talked about bug in versus bug out in at least a few of other of my videos, but the biggest challenge for me is that, or one of the biggest challenges, of course, is just all the people. Bugging out by car is probably going to be a nightmare, almost guaranteed. At least if I'm bugging out kind of at the last minute. Which gets to the other point. Well, why don't you just bug out early? Um, I mean, I have to be sure. If I was 100% sure something was coming, um, and we had notice, I mean, of course I would bug out. But let's say there's some civil unrest. I do live in Los Angeles, and we did have the LA riots here, so we sort of have a template, at least in my present city, for that. Excuse me. So let's take that example and say the riots sort of were spreading and spreading and spreading, getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it looked like maybe things were going to get a little bit crazy. Would I bug out? It's tough. This is an issue that I definitely have struggled with, gone back and forth. Recently I've sort of capitulated to the bugging out a little bit, just because, mainly because a lot of other people are going to be bugging out. Secondly, because bugging out by car is going to be really tenuous. So trying to carry, all my supplies and bicycle and trailer or however I do that is not necessarily a straightforward endeavor. Um, Certainly possible, but not something I've really kind of gotten into works right now. And I really don't see it as I don't know. It's hard for me to see. I've been outdoors and I've tried to do the whole camping, hiking, backpacking thing, and as much chaos as presumably there's going to be in the city, there's going to be chaos in the forest too. And I'm on a second story on a relatively good block, and even my building has some good defensibility. You know, you really, when you're out in the wilderness, you don't have shit for security. You really don't. You might have a dog or some, electronic devices, or maybe you're up against a mountain and you have a river and a cliff and you got some like really good geography, or you're in a valley and there's only one way in. Um, but whatever the situation, you're out in the open. You're really out in the open, just all the time. Um, Unless you're building a fort or a campsite, or like I said, you're in a cave, or you got some really sweet situations set up. You're not going to have walls and shelter, and you know people just come up to you and do whatever they want. If you're not aware of their presence, and I presently don't even have a pet, so if I fall asleep out in the forest, there's I guess I would have to have some kind of perimeter security, which I haven't even thought about that much. Other than some fishing line and a couple cans or something. But so even though I know that there's going to be a lot of turmoil in Los Angeles, I feel like if I can survive the big suck, like, if the power went off right now, it would start to turn into shit, and the next few weeks, months would get horrific. But if I can get through that, what happens afterward? I feel like there's as much opportunity in the city to thrive, as there is in the country. Because, at least in my immediate area, we're going to run out of, even up in the hills and the mountains. Even if only 1 out of 1,000 people goes up in the mountains, that's a lot of people in the mountains. So the mountains are going to run out of deer and pigeon and, you know, squirrels and whatever else is up in there. People are going to keep hunting and hunting and hunting and trapping, and it's going to work for a while, but I don't think the focus is going to be on hunting sustainably. So it's going to come down to really growing food and raising food. You can do that in the country. Sure, you can do that in the wilderness. It'd be nice not to be in that super dense population, but I guess it's just hard for me to visualize just picking up. I mean, it's not like I'm that physically attached to my belongings. Everything. If I did need to bug out in my car, I'm pretty comfortable that I can take everything of value, which in a prepping world, which is, my bags, my food, my bicycle, maybe a surfboard or two, I don't know, going out to the mountains with a surfboard, right? But maybe I could use it as a splint or something. I don't know, make a wagon out of it. Point being, I'm not afraid of like putting everything in my car and going out there. I'm just concerned that in even very straightforward ways like sewage, and the sewage, here ain't going to run forever, but at least as far as the sewage is running and things like that, as long as I don't know, it's a hard thing to conceptualize. Yes, being out in the country and being able to live off the land would be nice, but to be sustainable, to get a homestead going, that's just a lot. That's why it makes, and honestly, that's why it makes the most sense that if you can, move out in the country and start now, because becoming sustainable is not an overnight thing. So, I do agree with the subscriber's comment that I'd love to be out and not be bugging in, but for the immediate future, um, while society hasn't collapsed, I and that's a good question. So I'm going to leave the video with this. I don't have to be close to school right now. I choose to be close to my school. My school is near Los Angeles, so it makes sense for me to live not near my school, and I'm very close to my school. I ride, a mile away. knowing what we know, given the world that we live in today, assuming that I could, say my lease is up at the end of the year. I don't even know when it is up, but I'm on a year lease and it's up at some point. Would you move into the country, even if you couldn't buy something, even if you just had to rent? Um, would you start renting in the country just to get kind of into that homestead type life that, and would you try to rent somewhere where you could have a garden or raise chickens or goats or maybe rent a room on a farm and see if you could help out? Would you make a move like that? I'm sort of personally planning on, once I get a full time job, looking towards buying some land and kind of doing stuff on the land. So that's sort of my medium to long term better prepping goal. But I'd be curious to hear you think if you feel strongly that I should get out to the country like ASAP and just. The thing is, if I'm an hour away from school, I got to commute an hour to school every day. Now, the time that I have school, it's actually a reverse commute, so it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if I had to commute an hour to school. But being in the country, being able to do slightly more preppy type stuff versus how much money and energy and time I'm going to spend maintaining my vehicle so it doesn't break down. Maybe I'd have a good excuse to buy a dirt bike, a nice fuel efficient dirt bike to ride on the freeway or something. I don't know. But thanks for watching. I know it's kind of a long video, but I really appreciate my subscribers and people watching my videos making comments. So I just want to give a nod to the fact that I do read the comments and they do resonate with me. Definitely appreciate people giving me feedback, and I'll see you next time.